So photographers, cinematographers, and even painters for that matter have all faced the same challenge when it comes to creating good images, and that is how do you show a three-dimensional subject in a two-dimensional frame? Because when you add depth, it helps create a sense of place and also helps draw your audience into the frame. So let's look at how to create this depth by using leading lines in your shots. Hey everyone, Camber here, showing you how to use your camera to make good videos. So if you're new, consider subscribing and also joining my private Facebook group where you can get more personalized help on your filmmaking journey. And leading lines does not mean you're going to draw lines on your frame like I did earlier. Rather, it's a compositional technique of using natural or man-made lines in your frame in such a way that it guides your viewer's attention toward your subject. So let's look at some movie examples that utilize leading lines for a more interesting composition. So let's first look at some examples of roads. And here you can see this road guides your eyes from the subject of the truck to their destination in the mountains. Again, here we have a reveal showing a road that guides your eyes towards the vehicles that will be bringing the conflict in the scene. And here we have the subject walking down a road, and you can see that there are a lot of lines leading towards the subject. Not only do you have the edges and the middle of the road guiding your eyes, but you also have the fence line as well as the shape of the building in the background that also points toward the subject's head. Let's move on to stairs. Here you have a huge staircase that guides your eyes from the main subject right up to the place where she'll find her sister that she's been looking for. And here's another staircase with multiple subjects that's framed in such a way as to point from multiple directions toward both of the subjects in the frame. And here we have a very visually interesting staircase that guides your eyes from where the chase starts to where it's going to be continuing. And continuing that chase, you now have a railing that leads to where the subject came from, as well as another railing and stairs that point down toward the same area. And again, in the same sequence, we see this path that guides your eyes through the frame not only to the subject, but also to where he's heading in the chase. Now here's an example of how you can frame a room so that both the floor and the ceiling guide your viewer's eyes toward the main subject in the frame. And this doesn't have to just be in an indoor hallway. If you can find any long corridor type structure, you can use that to frame your shot where the floor and ceiling both point towards your subject. And then of course there are train tracks, but in this case if you shoot from a lower wide angle, this will really help to make those lines be even more pronounced. And what's really cool about this shot is you not only have the bridge and the train tracks pointing toward the subject on top of the train, but you also have this gun frame so that it's pointing towards him as well. So let's take a look at some paths. It's pretty obvious here how the sides of the wall and the edges of the path on the ground are guiding us toward the subject, but what's not quite as obvious is that the lights on the street lamps are doing that as well. And again in the similar scene, we have both the edges of the path guiding us toward this couple walking together, as well as the street lamps that point us toward them. In this scene we have a high angle where the pews are pointing right down toward the subject entering the church. And they do so both from the front to back and pointing from the sides. And again, what's not quite so obvious is that the hanging lamps are also forming a line pointing right towards them. Here we have a block wall and a fence pointing toward the subject from multiple directions. And we also have this background fence, sidewalk, and curb pointing towards them. And in the end scene of the same film, you have this great angle that points toward the subjects with the curb lines and the fence lines guiding us right down towards them. And finally in Thor, you have one of my favorite uses of leading lines where we have multiple lines pointing to different subjects. You have the guards and part of the staircase that lead up towards the king, but then the outside line of people also guides our eyes in a curve towards Thor's friends that also leads up to the king. And then finally, you have these lines on the floor that guide your eyes toward Thor, who is the main subject in the scene. So as you can see, there are tons of natural and man-made lines that you can use to help compose your shot in such a way that it'll add depth, help guide your viewer's attention, and also just make for a more interesting image. And again, if you are interested in more personalized help in filmmaking, then join my private Facebook group, Camber Motion Community, linked down below. And if this video was helpful, please help me out by leaving a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you soon.